Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Ahead of her fight this weekend, Erica Cruz says, I want to take this first step on Friday, and the fighter I'd go after in the division would be Mayerline Rivas, says the former featherweight champion, Erica Cruz, which is interesting because the fight she's about to have, the fight with Melissa Odessa from right here in the US of A, that's being billed as a super featherweight contest. Super featherweight, that's 130 pounds. And if Erica means to fight Mayerline Rivas after that, that means she plans on dropping 2 divisions south of where this contest is taking place to super bantamweight. Super bantamweight, that's 122 pounds.
Matchroom has a good number of prize stallions, anywhere in between 118, 122, and 126.
They do. And it appears that Erica, for all accounts, still is a Matchroom fighter. I'm going to assume that Mayerline still has some ties to Matchroom as well. Mayerline, who for me and my money is very fortunate to still have that WBA title. She's very fortunate to still be a champion because I saw her last fight. I saw the Nazarena Romero fight, and she was losing that thing, or she should have.
They scored it a draw.
After a clash of heads that resulted in a cut, the fight was brought to a premature stoppage. The judges read their scorecards, and they scored it a draw. But for me and my money, Mayerline was losing.
Yeah.
Noticeable signs of slowing down.
Yeah.
Slippage.
Erica wants to fight her.
She's got to get through Melissa Odessa first. She's got to get through her this Friday south of the border. And I'm a big fan of Melissa Odessa's boxing. I think she's one of the best boxers at or around 118 pounds. But this fight, it's being billed at 130. I don't know if that's a typo.
But it's being billed at 130 pounds as a super featherweight contest. That's 130.
Erica Cruz normally campaigns at 126, whereas Melissa normally campaigns at 118 or just above.
Though not 130.
I think this is the heaviest that Melissa will have ever fought in the pro ranks. She comes from a great amateur background and she's very skilled, but not as experienced as a pro as Erica Cruz. And Erica is a naturally bigger woman. She campaigns at heavier weights than Melissa does. Tack on that it's taking place south of the border. It's taking place in Mexico, this fight. That gives Erica home field advantage.
Given that Erica is such a prolific puncher, such a busy fighter in a round, the deck is really stacked against Melissa Odessa, who may have the right style for the job, but perhaps not the right experience under these circumstances.
Perhaps not. I would like to see Melissa Odessa beat the odds. I would like to see her pull it off, but the old cynic in me says south of the border against the Mexican national who's a prolific puncher.
Forget it.
It's not that I'm not rooting for her. It's that the name of the game is forecasting the outcome of the match. And when I look at these two fighters, how they operate and what the circumstances are,
Forget it.
problem is, I don't think Melissa Odessa's got enough stopping power to stop Erica Cruz. Erica's one tough old bird. Went the distance with Amanda Serrano at featherweight. She can take a shot. She can take a punch, and I don't think Melissa's going to be able to knock her out.
Short of a knockout, it goes to the cards.
That being said, the level of dominance that Melissa Odessa would have to exhibit in a round by round, for 10 rounds to win a decision in Mexico?
It's a tall order. It's a tough ask.
So I am going with Erica Cruz to win a points decision, and we know what Erica means to do beyond this Friday's fight. But what about Melissa? What if Melissa Odessa beats the odds? What if she does the unthinkable and gets the W this Friday? That would open certain doors for her.
Matchroom has a propensity to offer fighters, even fighters that they don't have under contract. Matchroom has a propensity to bring them back.
Many times have you seen Beck Connolly opposite the ring of Matchroom fighter? Several times.
Many.
If Melissa Odessa can pull this off, if she wins, I could see Matchroom using her for future fights and future shows. I could see that, though I don't think Melissa would stay at 130 pounds. I think she'd go somewhere in between 122 or 126.
At 36, I'm not sure she can still keep making 118 pounds.
Tough, because my head is with Erica Cruz, but my heart is with Melissa Odessa.
She's a good fighter.
She's Puerto Rican.
Puerto Ricans are hot!
They are, but the odds really are stacked against Melissa Odessa in this Friday's fight.
If she were to win, I could see her traversing a similar route to the one that Erica Cruz is describing. I could see her going after Mayerline Rivas.
Or perhaps the winner of Ali versus Guzman 2, set to go down in Monte Carlo on the undercard of Joe Cordina's next fight.
Perhaps.
There are 4 separate reigning champions at 122 pounds and a boatload of contenders and challengers, and there's a lot of opportunity there if Melissa can pull this off. Though, as stated, my heart may be with Melissa, but my head, it's with Erica.
So even though I would like to see Melissa Odessa win this weekend, I am going with Erica on points. Hopefully, Melissa can prove me wrong.
Puerto Ricans are hot!
Men's super middleweight news. Canelo opens up about contract relationship with Al Haymon. I think PBC is one of the best.
I think he's only saying that because he's working with them now.
I think that he exhausted all his other options at Matchroom, and the PBC has a good number of guys he can pounce on, good number of guys he can beat up on, so here we are.
Remember when people thought he was going to fight Edgar Berlanga?
His critics. I think there are good fights at the PBC. I always like to work with good people and the best out there. I think the PBC is one of the best, Alvarez told BoxingScene.com in an interview. We don't know who the next 2 opponents will be. We're 100% focused on Jermell, and then we're going to sit down with Al Haymon and see what is next.
If you're Al Haymon, you have to be happy with this situation because there wasn't much marquee value in a Jermell Charlo.
Nothing against him. I actually have a lot of respect for Jermell, and I think he is one of the better fighters over there at the PBC. But in terms of marquee value,
Didn't have much.
not Jermell Charlo, not Jermall Charlo, not David Benavidez. We saw the numbers for his box office debut, his pay-per-view debut. Wasn't nothing to write home about.
If you're Al Haymon, you've got to be happy right now because Canelo signing that 3-fight deal enables you to stage 3 Canelo fights, 3 Canelo pay-per-views.
I really like Al Haymon, and I'm happy to be here, Alvarez said on a recent episode of the PBC podcast, adding that Al Haymon is a great person and great businessman. During the kickoff press conference in New York, the Mexican star also highlighted his new alliances. We love being involved in these kinds of fights. Al Haymon, thank you for this too. Showtime, everybody involved. I think right now, the best promoters are Canelo Promotions and PBC.
So let's make this clear. Canelo Promotions is what's adding all the value to this show and what other shows they may end up doing later on.
Al Haymon has the options, he's got the opponents, he's got the contracts, and Canelo brings the added value. Now, Eddie Hearn,
He recently chimed in on Canelo's alliance with the PBC.
saying, I didn't have any options for him. He made the right decision.
I have to agree.
Things not having worked out for a Dimitri Bivol rematch, a rematch I don't think he would have won anyway.
This was the best route. This was the best option.
We talk socially every now and again, but he made the best move for his career, Hearn said on the DAZN Boxing Show. And I think he did make the best move. I didn't have any options for him at all. Really, as close as we were and as friendly as we are, it really didn't work like that. Once the offer got presented to him, I think he made the right decision.
Now, even though Canelo Alvarez left Matchroom on much better terms than Manny Pacquiao left Top Rank, this reminds me of when Manny left Top Rank and ended up at the PBC.
He was able to extend his shelf life as a fighter, an aging fighter who looked like he was aging opposite the ring Jeff Horn in Australia in what was his final fight as a top-ranked fighter.
He looked old in the Jeff Horn fight, but he looked like he found the fountain of youth once he crossed over to the PBC. Now, why do you think that is?
It's because there are levels to the game. Put simply, it's because there are levels. And a good number of fighters on that side of the street, they're not on the level. They're trying to be anything but boxers, anything but fighters.
When you see Danny Garcia tell Terrence Crawford, I don't need to fight you because I've got money, I've got millions, I flip houses.
Does that even seem like something that a fighter would say? A fighter by trade? You got a lot of guys over there, they're trying to be anything but fighters. You know, Adrian Broner, he wanted to be a rapper more than he wanted to be a boxer. It's no surprise that Manny kicked his ass.
So would you be surprised if Terrence kicked Danny's ass? Or Keith Thurman's?
point of it all is that Manny Pacquiao was able to extend his shelf life as a fighter by going over there and fighting PBC brand boxers, which are really less than boxers, less than fighters. And the same might apply to Canelo because some speculate that he's in decline, that there is some slippage.
He's a lot younger now than Manny was then when Manny first crossed over there.
I've long been a fan of Canelo Alvarez before we even represented him, Hearn said. We had a tremendous run of, 5 or 6 fights? We made him hundreds of millions of dollars. He made us a lot of money as well. I loved working for him. I think we did a brilliant job. I think he enjoyed his time with us, and I hope, subject to how long he goes on for, that we get the opportunity to do it again. I'm sure we'll catch up later this year, Hearn added. I hope he beats Charlo.
What led to this?
The collapse of what was supposed to be the Dimitri Bivol fight. The Dimitri Bivol rematch. According to Canelo Alvarez,
Canelo says Bivol made rematch negotiations hard. I tried my best to make the deal happen.
I told you, I ain't got no interest in seeing Canelo Alvarez venture north of super middleweight where it's clear he does not belong. He hit his ceiling up there, and he's not a light heavyweight. He ain't got the frame for it.
No shame in that.
Look, Bivol asked and tried to make negotiations hard, right?
Right.
And tried to make his own decisions and everything. And I tried my best, Alvarez told Brian Custer on The Last Stand. Right now, I am focused 100% on my fight with Jermell Charlo. And working with PBC right now is my focus, said Alvarez. I'm going to try my best to stop Charlo. I will.
Vadim Kornilov, who manages the career of Dimitri Bivol, stated that he does not expect a rematch to ever take place.
I'm actually okay with that. Sometimes that happens. I mean, Manny never ran it back with Jeff Horn.
That didn't stop Manny from being in notable fights and picking up notable wins over notable names.
And it's not like there's a high abundance of guys standing online single file waiting to fight Dimitri. He still is a hot potato that only Canelo had the cojones to go up there and fight.
Canelo's critics like to criticize him for losing that fight to Dimitri Bivol, but you tell me, which one of the fighters that they support are in any hurry to fight that same fighter, to fight that same Dimitri Bivol?
It's gotten so bad the man hasn't even had a fight this year, and they are struggling greatly to find him an opponent. Yet out of all the guys that are around these weights, it was only Canelo that had the stones to go up there and challenge him.
There are bona fide light heavyweights, career light heavyweights that don't want no parts of this guy. They don't want nothing to do with him. But Canelo, who's a lot smaller than they are, he tried.
He at least tried. Canelo, who said, look, I've done a lot of things, I've fought with many fighters, and I think it's the correct moment to come here and fight in the PBC. We sat down with Haymon and talked about it. I'm happy to be working with him, said Alvarez. David Benavidez is always there. I always try to do the best fights out there. If it's good for boxing, it's good for me.
I think he will determine what his next move is based on how he performs with Jermell. Most are expecting him to knock out Jermell. I'm expecting him to knock out Jermell.
Then maybe he has that David Benavidez fight, provided that David makes it past Demetrius Andrade. Or maybe he takes up Terrence Crawford on his offer. Undisputed champion versus undisputed champion. Again.
Irrespective of what you think of their fighters, Canelo has a lot of options on that side of the street that could keep him active, keep him busy, and keep him winning.
It's what makes it the right move, and many of these fighters are the fighters that Canelo Alvarez was criticized for not having already fought in the past. He's giving his critics what they want, isn't he? Elsewhere in the super middleweight division, Demetrius Andrade claims that he's waiting on David Benavidez. Let's make this shit happen.
Widespread rumors about a fight between them for weeks now, yet no official announcement. Not yet. And the clock is ticking.
Somewhat of a break in character for Demetrius, who's become more accustomed to mitigating risks instead of taking them. I know you don't get too many people saying, let's make this shit happen, but let's make this shit happen. Andre told BoxingScene.com. Speed the process up.
In the past, Demetrius has been very selective, very careful about who he fights. You know, he didn't want to fight Matvey Korobov or Erslandy Lara.
Sergey Derevyanchenko, Jermell Charlo, who he pulled out on quite famously years ago. I mean, Demetrius has been selective in the past.
This is a break in character for him.
A guy who had no time for Yanni Bekalem Kanalai or Zach Parker, but the same guy who had time for Damon Nicholson.
This is a break in character for him.
That he's taking on David Benavidez, a risky opponent, a risky fight, a big risk for what is not that big a reward. We saw the box office numbers for David's pay-per-view debut, and they weren't nothing to write home about. Maybe at this age, Demetrius realizes he's running out of time, and if he wants big money, he needs to make big things happen. That involves big risks.
The boogeyman versus the monster. Let's make this shit happen, said Demetrius Andrade.
Tack on that Demetrius Andrade isn't necessarily the house fighter or even the more marketable fighter of the two in terms of marketability. It is a bit easier to sell an action fighter like David Benavidez than a pure boxer like Demetrius Andrade.
What's that supposed to mean?
That means that if Demetrius Andrade and David Benavidez are still standing after what is a close competitive fight, in all likelihood, David will get consideration.
Yeah.
David will get the nod because David's the house fighter.
Demetrius is fighting him anyway.
Demetrius Andrade, who says he won't study Benavidez's last fight, I'm nothing like Caleb Plant.
Fighters got egos, they all think that God broke the mold when he made them.
If they're gonna liken themselves to anyone, usually it's a fighter that's a lot, and I mean a lot, more accomplished than they are, fighter with more success than they've got.
Not gonna liken themselves to their contemporaries. They're not gonna liken themselves to fighters that may be at or around the same level as them. And he does have things in common with Caleb Plant. They're not carbon copies of each other.
But they do have things in common.
A few nuances aside,
They do have things in common.
they're both long-range fighters. They're both movers, both pure boxers.
Limited ability, mid-range to inside. They're not inside fighters, they're more outside fighters, mobile ones.
And they ain't big on power, neither of them.
But he doesn't want to watch tape on Benavidez versus Plant. Ultimately, doing so makes little to no sense to Andrade, as the former two-division champion juxtaposes his own skills to that of Plant. He notices that Plant, while talented, was somewhat limited, making it extraneous to even attempt the very style he used on the night. I'm nothing like Caleb Plant, Andrade told BoxingScene.com in a recent interview. I'm 10 times different fighter than Caleb Plant. He's got ability for himself. I don't think he's the most athletic. I think I'm really athletic. I can change rhythm. I can make it all happen.
We'll see if he does.
Where him and Caleb differ, because they are both pure boxers and long-range mobile fighters, is that Demetrius is a bit more herky-jerky than Caleb. Caleb is an orthodox fighter, whereas Demetrius is a southpaw.
Not sure how much of a difference that's going to make in the fight, but then again, David Benavidez doesn't box very many southpaws, does he?
So it's a factor. Ultimately, it's the temperance of the fighter and their preferences that makes them similar.
That makes both Caleb and Demetrius pure boxers, whether Demetrius wants to acknowledge it or not.
Demetrius, who has stated, at least in the past, has been more prone to mitigating risks than taking them. So why all of a sudden is he taking a risk with David Benavidez? Maybe it's his age. He is in his mid-30s. I believe he's 36.
Could ask the same thing about David.
Not but a few weeks ago, David Benavidez's promoter, Samson Lukowicz, when asked about, a Benavidez versus Andrade fight, he said Andrade wouldn't sell a single seat, a single ticket. He downed the idea that those two fighters should fight, but here we are.
So why did he warm up to the idea?
Maybe it's because Demetrius is in his mid-30s and he's not a big puncher. If you were going to fight him, now's the time.
In any event, it's an interesting fight.